There's a name buzzing around the metal community right now that's got everyone asking, what the is Callboy? Well, since 2010, Eskimo Callboy, more on the name change later, has experimented with the wild blend of EDM and metalcore, often called Electronicore. Unlike some bands that take themselves a little too seriously, this German band is just here to party. Their infectious energy and humor clearly struck a chord with fans, as their videos have racked up over 100 million views combined. In fact, 2021's Hypa Hypa was the video that pretty much kicked off this popularity and introduced their newest vocalist. But in 2022, after learning that Eskimo is actually considered a derogatory term, the name Eskimo Callboy, as well as some questionable lyrics from older songs, didn't fit with who they had become. Committing to tolerance and non-discrimination, they removed some older songs from streaming and rebranded as Callboy. But did the name change slow them down? No. They're still cracking out heavy music for those who like to party. So if you're looking for a good time in the metal scene, Callboy is your band.
Opeth, evolving their sound. The most controversial moment in Opeth's history came with the release of Heritage. Coming off of the success of Watershed, the experimental, progressive, melodic death metal band was challenged with writing a follow-up that could precede it. So the band wrote a record that attempted to do just that. But when they listened back to it, they felt like their hearts weren't in it. After 20 years, their taste in music had already begun to shift. They hated the idea of releasing what they felt like was a Watershed 2.0. So a decision was made and the album was completely scrapped. Starting fresh alleviated the pressure. Mikael Åkerfeldt leaned further into their progressive rock sound and disbanded from their death metal growls. The result was Heritage, an album that strayed far enough away from expectations that it led many old fans to disconnect from the band altogether, but would also introduce a slew of new fans to take notice. Some would suggest that this move was essential to allowing Opeth to flourish and focus on their musical talents. But what do you think? Is it better to stick to a genre you are no longer passionate about, or should you follow your heart and evolve over time?
Remembering Trevor. The world will remember Trevor Strnad as the electrifying frontman of the Black Dahlia murder. But did you know he was also an avid collector and retro gamer? His collection of original Nintendo games were made up of mostly RPGs and side-scrolling adventure games, the most influential being Castlevania, which served as the inspiration for many of the Black Dahlia murder's neoclassical style lyrics. He also collected all things metal, from his sizable collection of metal band t-shirts, including classics like Obituary and more obscure like Goat Penis, to his array of metal band posters and artwork. However, his true pride and joy was his collection of metal CDs. He had so many CDs that they had to be meticulously organized by subgenre and alphabetized. That's because Trevor wasn't just a death metal vocalist. He was a metal fan through and through. He was also humble, charismatic, and gone far too soon.
Tardy and the metal Meowlisha. Obituary's drummer and co-founder, Tardy, was tired of seeing cats suffer on the streets of Tampa, Florida. So he and his girlfriend founded the metal Meowlisha nearly 2 decades ago. Through their hard work, they've been rescuing and caring for feral cats using the Humane Society's Trap, Neuter, Vaccinate, Return program. This prevents overpopulation and protects the cats from disease. But that's not all. Every day before dinner, Donald travels 2.5 hours to provide food and water to these cats. Their dedication to this cause has inspired support from other bands like Cattle Decapitation and countless fans. Together with the metal Meowlisha, they've taken care of 30 colonies and over 100 cats.
Why do so many consider Death the most influential death metal band of all time? Well, yeah, death is literally in their name, but that's not why. And no, I'm not here to argue over who started death metal. That can be its own video, let me know if you want that. But Death's influence over death metal stems from their drive to continuously push the genre to evolve. With their raw and aggressive sound and vocals, Death quickly became pioneers of death metal. Scream, Bloody Gore, and Leprosy are often hailed as the first true death metal records and templates for future bands. Then, with Spiritual Healing, they helped to pioneer technical death metal, adding complex compositions and philosophical lyrics. Symbolic would show off their melodic death metal chops, and the Sound of Perseverance would help to shape progressive death metal as we know it. Who knows what the future might have held for the band if it were not for the unfortunate death of Chuck Schuldiner in 2001, which brought an end to death. But their legacy lives on. So much so, many still consider Chuck to be the godfather of death metal.
Cradle of Filth's lost album. Did you know that there's an album by Cradle of Filth that no one will ever get to hear? In the early days of Cradle of Filth, the young band had big dreams. So when they were finally signed to a record label, Tombstone Records, they were eager to get into the studio and record a debut album titled Goetia. So the band went to Springvale Studios to do just that. But fate had other plans. When the album was complete, Tombstone Records couldn't pay for the recordings, leaving the band's debut album in limbo. Springvale Studios gave them chance after chance, but eventually they were forced to wipe the tapes clean to be used again for other bands, unaware that Tombstone Records was going going out of business, Cradle of Filth had signed a bad deal, forcing them to start all over. It would be another 2 years before a debut album from the band would emerge. Over a decade later, a tape containing a track from Goetia would suddenly appear. It was a copy of the original recordings that Dani Filth used to show off to their friends back in the day, but now could finally salvage at least one song from the lost album. And so, in 2014, within the remastered re-release of their third demo, Cradle of Filth unveiled the only surviving song from Goetia, giving fans a glimpse into the album that almost was.